There are times in life that utterly break everything open. Occasionally, it's not a fight, a big scene, or even a dialogue. Usually, it's silence, a moment so dense that words just can't bear it. Garrison's funeral was more than a goodbye. It was the moment when this family's cracks became irreconcilable. And not only to us who were watching, but to everyone who was standing there too. You could feel it in the manner in which they shunned eye contact, and observe it in the manner in which they maintained miles of space between them, even while standing feet away. If you haven't already, do subscribe and hit the bell, because here we never mince words. And I genuinely want to know what felt inside of you while you watched that episode, so leave your thoughts in the comments. This wasn't just another scene. This was a reckoning. It hurt to lose Garrison. But what happened at his funeral wasn't grief, though it was that too. It turned a brutal spotlight on all the wounds this family had left unbound. Everyone turned out to bury a son, a brother, a loved one. But what was supposed to be a time of coming together brutally exposed the truth. This family is fractured. There was no hug between Kody and Janelle, no gentle looks, not even a glance. Christine kept her children close to her. Janelle hugged her boys. Kody stood with Robyn and her children as if they were a different family altogether. Mary, although there, was far from the center, neither with Janelle nor with Christine, almost as if she were outside their realm. Leon stood with their other siblings, and that spoke volumes too. The lack of Garrison's brother Mykelti and her husband Tony was deafening as well. This wasn't just a funeral. It was a bare exposure of loss, of years of betrayal, neglect, and silence. The rift was no longer emotional. It was physical, visible on screen, and completely heart-wrenching. This funeral segment didn't pull any punches. It gave us a quiet, unedited glimpse of a loss that does more than hurt. It separates. What we saw was not merely a family bidding farewell to Garrison. It was a human geography of who still speaks to whom, who can no longer do so, and who does not even attempt it. At the cemetery, the family was divided. Literally. Kody and Robyn stood one side of the grave, sharply dressed and collected, as though at church. Janelle, Christine, their children, and Mary stood on the other side, more informally and warmly dressed, like people mourning a person they actually knew. That contrast wasn't lost on television viewers. It was symbolic. One side stiff and composed, the other broken but real to see. And sitting right in the middle of it was silence. A lot of silence. Not the kind that's peaceful, but the kind that's like a wall. No hugs between Kody and his other children. No small talk or gestures over that emotional no man's land. Everyone remained in their own corner, with a huge space between them. The camera took it all in, holding for lengthy, uneasy shots. Janelle hugging her coat, Christine hugging one of her children, Leon standing stoically with siblings, eyes cast downward. And Kody, serious, funereal. Robyn stood wordlessly with her children, but never approached the others. No tears crossed over between the two parties, no overtures, no apologies. The most chilling aspect? It all seemed inevitable, as though everyone had already known reconciliation was not on the horizon. Not now, not here, not even for Garrison. Janelle passed the urn to Kody. That was all. No words spoken, no looks, just transferring a responsibility, not a grieving. Kody buried the urn, but even then, no joining occurred. It was as if two distinct ceremonies occurring simultaneously, but never intersecting. And while all the rest remained in their emotional boundary, one stepped over quietly. Logan, the oldest son and peacemaker. He ambled over to Robyn's children, reached out for a silent hug. No drama, no grand gesture. Just a simple, gentle act in a sea of division. And that fleeting moment told us much. Logan still tries. But no one else stepped over the line. No one breached that unspoken boundary. not even for closure. And that's what stung the most. If losing a son, a brother, a loved one couldn't get this family together for at least 5 minutes, then what will? None of Kody and Robyn's family came towards the others, and none of Christine or Janelle's kids appeared to be interested in attempting either. And to be real, it's not really surprising. There's too much water under that bridge, too much pain and dismissal over too many years. Not only is this family broken, but they've abandoned even going through the motions to say otherwise. This was not a show of unity in public. It was a whispered admission. This family was broken, and they aren't going to repair it. Not today. Not even for Garrison. You could sense it in the atmosphere beyond the sadness, beyond the weight of the funeral. What actually hung in the air was a common pain among the siblings, the kind of pain that results not so much from losing a brother, but from losing the very thing that once held them all together, the sense that they were still a family. Leon was there, as was Maddie, Gabe, Hunter, Logan, and most of Christine's children. While Mike, Kelty, and Tony weren't, probably because they'd moved to North Carolina, their absence nonetheless counted. Certain individuals were missing, both physically and in spirit, and that was important. This wasn't about showing up, it was about what showing up meant. Leon standing alongside their siblings, but not Mary, said it all. It indicated precisely where their strongest bond is. Even in bereavement, they opted to stand by Christine's and Janelle's kids. Maddie, Hunter, and Gabe weren't verbally effusive on television, but their facial expressions, their stance, and the fact that they hung close to their mom, Janelle, explained everything. There was a reserved, protective sorrow there, devotedness. And then there was Logan, forever the older brother, forever the mediator. He kept silent, but he didn't have to. His mere act of crossing over to Robyn's children and hugging them was little but colossal, a glimpse of what once was. But even that hug failed to shatter the barrier. No other siblings crossed over, and Robyn's children did not advance either. The line held. The one that actually cut to the quick was in the exchange between Leon and Maddie. Maddie spoke it clearly, and it stung. I feel sad for Kody, but I feel really sad for Kody's kids. Not my siblings, not our family. Kody's kids. That alone speaks volumes. Then Leon said something that lingered with me. I just want to be able to talk to them. By them, he was referring to Robyn's children. No bitterness was in his words, only aching. A basic desire to be reunited, to converse as they used to. But the fact that they cannot, that no conversation has even occurred, that silence is more painful than any fight. It's tragic, because what Garrison's passing accomplished was to remind these siblings, particularly those who spent their lives close to one another, what they lost along the way. Not only their brother, but the connection, the hierarchy, the sense that all of them belong to the same family. You can see they yearn for that connection. At least some of them do. Leon's voice had that anguish. Maddie's words had that sorrow. These aren't individuals seeking more drama. They're individuals attempting to comprehend how things had gotten so far apart. And there was silence from Robyn's children. No apparent emotion, no communication, no indication they wished to be approached. We don't know what has been communicated behind closed doors, but we do know what we observed. Isolation. Total emotional distance. This wasn't simply a grieving family. This was a family coming to understand that losing a loved one isn't just something that grieves them. It reveals how far apart they've grown and how few bridges to cross are left. What hit hardest, perhaps even harder than the chasm or the silence, was who came emotionally. Christine and Janelle didn't only show up at their son's funeral. They appeared in every way that counted. They stood with their children in the heartache. They hugged them, sat with them. They did not shrink from the pain or back away from the cameras. They remained real, raw, and attached. Janelle's strength was subtle, but certain. You could witness her keeping it together for her boys, even as the death of Garrison was obviously shattering her. Her sons Gabe, Hunter, and Logan were not far from her side. It was obvious that they were there not just to grieve their brother, but to watch out for their mom. That connection had been established years ago. Trust, reliability, affection. It wasn't something that suddenly appeared. It existed even off stage. Christine was a rock as well, not only for her children, but for Janelle. The way those two supported each other through all of this, these women who had weathered so many storms side by side, it spoke volumes. They weren't merely co-oms. They were family. Chosen family. And then there was David, Christine's new husband. If you ever had any question about David's place in this family, that episode closed that door for good. He did not reach for center stage, did not give himself attention, but you could sense that he was there, calm, centered, steady. The children respect him, and he seems to be fully comfortable with them and Christine. She finally had someone next to her who did not vanish when things got difficult. He wasn't replacing Garrison's father, but he showed up, especially in ways Kody didn't. And that brings us to Kody. Kody cried, said all the words you'd expect. But everything about it felt distant, detached. Yes, he buried his son. Yes, he held the urn. But when it came time to connect with his other children, the ones who also lost a brother, he didn't even try. No handshake, no glance, no word. There's something about loss that takes away all the posturing, the ego, the performance. It lays bare the naked truth of an individual. And in that moment, Kody's sorrow felt more like an oration than a real relationship. Like he was grieving the concept of Garrison, not the son who had become distant from him long before he died. When she presented the urn to him, that was enough. No hug, no glancing at each other, just a muted transfer. She handed him the remains of the son they had made together, and he buried them. Cold, weighty, quiet, eternal. Not only for Garrison, but perhaps for whatever had been between them. It's difficult to ignore how Kody remained grounded with Robyn and her children. He never crossed that emotional boundary, never got up to comfort the others. And when he delivered the eulogy at the funeral, you could observe the other children's heads hung low, eyes diverted, nearly as though they did not accept a word of it, as though they viewed it as an act, a role he was portraying for the cameras. There's sorrow. And then there's sorrow with responsibility. Kody had the emotion but not the introspection, no indication of remorse for the estrangement, no attempt to mend. And that's the worst hurt. Because when the cameras stop rolling, when the funeral is over, what's left isn't the speech. It's the silence that ensues. You'd think that in a moment like this, laying a son to rest, everything else would fade away. Old arguments, hurt feelings, years of silence. You'd expect hugs and tears shared across the broken lines, people finally saying, "None of this matters anymore." But that moment never came. Not at the funeral. Not at the grave. Not even for Garrison. Instead, the divide was as sharp as ever. Two sides, two realities. Kody and Robyn on one side, rigid and dressed immaculately, like attending a photo shoot. Opposite them, Christine, Janelle, Mary, apart, not as a group, and their children. The children who were raised with Garrison, who lost not just a brother, but the connection they once shared. They lost more than just one person. They were compelled to grieve over a gap, with neither hand extended to meet them halfway. No making eye contact. No mutual grieving. No hug. Nothing. No hugging Kody and his older kids close. No trying to bridge the emotional divide that has been cast for decades. just silence. And it wasn't one of those silences that is healing. It was one that constricts, gets heavier, settles into every second. Then there was the sermon. Kody's brother-in-law, Tim, gave it. For an instant there was hope. His words were reflective, compassionate. He talked about a mother's sorrow, about healing, about how broken relationships need to be mended. But then he veered off, saying something that felt completely off. No one will understand the remorse of a father. That's when so many of us watching felt it. This wasn't for the family. This was damage control. Was that line meant to soften Kody's image? To suggest there's regret hidden beneath his cold exterior? Because the truth is, we didn't see it. Not at the funeral, not in his actions. He never bridged the gap, never recognized those facing him across the way, the ones who needed him most. Even at his own son's funeral, Kody couldn't meet his other children's gaze. And Robyn? Rarely seen in this episode. Would you like me to paraphrase further? One word, hardly a tear, and certainly not an emotion expressed towards Garrison's siblings. She was more like a visitor to another person's sorrow than a member of the family. There wasn't any indication that she ever really bonded with the children from the other wives, and perhaps that's the actual tragedy here. Rather than attempting to unite the family, she remained silent, aloof, just as always. The step-siblings from her Kody marriage wouldn't speak to their half-siblings. No hug, no greeting. The emotional wall was locked, sealed so tight that no fragment of it cracked through the grief. There was no bridge, only two worlds that refused to intersect, even in death. I keep going back to this. This was the moment. If ever there was a time to step forward, to speak up, to place love over ego, this was the time. So I have to ask, what sort of parent doesn't make that move? What sort of father stands in front of his bereaved children and doesn't give a single word? What sort of family, after everything they've shared together, opts for silence? The reality is there was no resolution here, no mending, no reconciliation, only space, more so than ever before. And now, I'd like to hear from you. I know I'm not alone sitting with these emotions. Did it touch you? Did it infuriate you? What did you notice in the way that this family navigated the most painful moment of their existence? Be sure to leave a comment below because I really want to know what you think. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for hanging in there.